would get off again.
All
Stuck with
cat
it.
finance meeting.
Mhm.
See, we were meeting April Fools or something. Are we good?
Yeah, you're live. Thank you.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, February 11th. Our first item on the agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from the January 14th Finance Committee meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 14th, 2021 Finance Committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Next agenda item is action authorizations to apply for emergency management grant. John, you going to give us the rundown, or
Do you want me to do that one, John?
Mona, if you'd like to?
I
I
think
think we do
John
this
maybe.
almost every year.
I'm breaking up. It's basically a standard resolution on council in the past that we send to the security division in Connecticut. Tries to sign a grant or donation from Homeland Security. It's just housekeeping for their part that I am authorized by to sign off on its Homeland Security. It usually relates to emergency management related items.
Okay, and this would go to the consent agenda for approval.
Yes,
Okay.
Do we have to reauthorize this every year? Is that what happens? I think
Yes.
we've done this. Okay.
when you, it's state agencies, yes.
So we need a motion to approve this.
Yes.
Do we need to read the whole thing, or can I just refer to the title and the agenda? Or
I think you just
Basically, the first involved is motion is finance moves the town council of council to enter into agreement
John, I
I guess-
don't know if it's me, but
authorizing the town manager to sign any document associated with.
John, you're breaking up. I don't know if I'm the only one.
Yeah,
it's hard to do.
yeah. You, Alan, are frozen in my picture. Everyone's frozen.
Or
Yeah,
if you should log out, log back in.
I think John's I think you're the one having the issue. Mona, you're in town hall also, though, right?
yeah, I am. And I can't hear him either. He is breaking up.
Okay.
He's totally frozen now for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the idea is we know what the resolution is. We need to move it forward.
Yes.
Jeff, as far as reading it, I think if you read the middle portions, that'll cover all legal requirements because we're only moving it to the council for approval.
Okay, so the two middle paragraphs. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the authorization to apply for emergency management grants. The resolution which states, resolve that the town council may enter into with and deliver to the state of Connecticut Department of Energy Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate. And further resolve that John Mayer, as town manager of the town of Rocky Hill, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the town of Rocky Hill and to do and perform all acts and things which he deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents, including not limited to executing, delivering all agreements and documents completed by such documents.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Our next agenda item, and it looks like John's trying to reboot, or hopefully trying to reboot. But discussion on the pool repairs, 2021 Parks Department. Welcome, Craig.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here tonight to just talk to you guys about actually painting our pool this coming spring. This was a function that we did not plan for in last year's fiscal year budget. We actually painted the pool when I first started in 2018, and I inherited that budget. We had a painting of the pool in that budget that we completed in May of 2019. The thinking was we were going to be able to get 3 years out of that. So in last year's budget process, I did not add that in because I didn't think we were going to be going to paint the pool or requesting to paint the pool. And now we're in a situation where we really need to paint the pool this spring before we can open it this summer. But what I presented you guys is a quote from Connecticut Custom Aquatics, and they are pretty much our go-to pool contractor for anything that we do, any maintenance related things that we do there. But what's happening now is, when you repaint the pool, you're painting on top of paint. So you're painting on top of paint, and what's happening now is it's starting to chip away. So in the quote that I gave you, there was a quote to just paint, which again, we'd be in the same predicament in 2 years to paint over it again. Or in this situation, I think the most financially responsible thing to do would be to go in and sandblast it. So what we would do with the sandblast is they go in with the sandblast media and they coat the entire pool and they sand it down. And then what happens when you paint over it, the paint has something to grab, and it will stay, hopefully we would hope to get at least 5 years out of it. So the cost for sandblast and painting is about $41,826. To just paint it, it would be, $21,126, and that includes all paint, labor, everything for both jobs. What I would like to do is use monies from this fiscal year that we had budgeted for our pools, for our part-time salaries. I would like to move this money into the appropriate line item, or however you guys want to go about this, and use monies from this fiscal year to take care of this project in the spring before we open up.
Craig, and I think you're talking at this point just about the Elmridge pool project?
This is just about the outdoor pool. Yes, sir. Yep. Okay.
Do you want to also present the high school pool one, and then we can just have one discussion altogether?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to put that in next year's fiscal year budget. I didn't know how you guys were going to go about taking back unused monies from this fiscal year because of COVID. But that's another repair that it's got to get done at some time. There's a small leak in the main drain of the indoor pool, and what ends up happening is it ends up we get water in the filter room in the indoor pool. It's not an immediate concern, but it is something that is going to have to get done at some point. And you could see it when you come into the filter room of the indoor pool. My initial idea was to not even touch that, and we would get through the summer and then fix the pool before the start of the school year. But, you know, if that's something we want to tackle now, it's only $6,000. We would have the funds to take care of it. And then I would in turn take that out of my budget request for next fiscal year.
I think we put it all on the table and we have a discussion
Okay.
now, and that way we can figure out where we are, because I'm just trying to take a look at what where we are with budgets too. But
Yep.
let's open it up to, while I'm scanning it, and you guys may be doing the same. We just got this proposal today, so
Yeah.
feel free to ask, Chris, Jeff, if you want to start with questions.
Yeah,
I
I
think-
did just, oh,
Go
good,
ahead.
Chris.
We're probably asking the same thing. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, in no particular order, the work to be done on the high school pool, is that a town expense or a Board of Ed expense?
I would consider it a town expense because we are the ones that maintain the pool. And we buy the chemicals for the pool, we staff the pool. I would consider that a town expense. So they actually pay for the heating of the pool. So they do have some skin in the game in that regard, but I would believe this to be our expense.
Okay. And just remind me, the pool usage since we went through COVID in 2020, what was the season like as far as usage and all? I can't remember what actually happened.
Yeah, no problem. So we ended up opening our outdoor pool last summer, and it was a great decision. It was very well received by the community. We definitely had a limited capacity at times in the pool. We were only allowing 60 people on the deck. And really you could on any given day, you could have up to maybe 200 people on the deck between both pools. But we were super cautious with how we wanted to make that happen. And we were open a full, 8 weeks in the summertime. So we opened up normal time in June and we closed normal time in August. After we closed, we did have access to the pool in the fall, the indoor pool, but it was actually indoor. It was indoor pool access for the girls swim team at the high school. So, that's pretty much been the access to the indoor pool since the school year started because of COVID regulations. So whenever there's swim team practices, we have a couple lifeguards that are on deck. And then the winter time we were shut down, and then they just reopened the pool again for the boys swim team for the high school. And since then we have had youth swim team practices that we've been able to staff as well. But in terms of early morning swims that we used to have, early bird swims, we're not doing that right now. The only people that are using the high school pool at this time are high school students, phys ed classes, if applicable, and then the Sea Lions youth swim team. So pretty much students in Rocky Hill.
And for this coming summer at Elm Ridge Pool, the expectation and hope is to open at least what you did last year, if not even more.
At bare minimum. After going through last summer, I would feel comfortable allowing more people to go on the deck. Again, we were being very cautious with how many people we allowed on the deck. We were staggering. We were altering spots on the deck where they could be, but I feel comfortable that we could handle more people for sure. There were some good things that came out of it. I mean, from a registration perspective, we were able to, see who exactly was using the pool on a daily basis because they had to register. They had to pre-register to use the times.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some good things that came up, and then they were paying per person to use the pool versus using a season pass.
Okay.
So we were able to break that down too, to see who's using it.
Okay. And so how long since Do you know how long it's been since it was last sandblasted, the outdoor pool? Is there any way to tell or?
I think it was either 6 or 8 years ago.
Okay, so
Um,
it lasts, you know.
Yeah, it lasted a while. My thought with this is, just looking forward and seeing our our debt obligations for the bills that we're paying back as a town with all our referendums. I don't see us building a new pool there in the next couple of years. I think we've got to plan this out. I think we do have to realize that pool is, pushing 55, 60 years old. So it has a shelf life. We've been able to stretch it pretty well. Connecticut Custom Aquatics is a good reputable company who's helped us along the way, and Walt does a really good job. But I do think that if we sandblast, that should get us another, hopefully 5 years without having to, at least paint the pool again.
Does the sandblasting, especially for like an older pool like this, ever do more damage than you want to do because it is as old or as it is?
I can't answer that question with the 100% accuracy, Jeff, but I would say that we did have some testing done last year we did some core testing, and the pool was pretty structurally sound, the inner guts of it. So I wouldn't be, our contractor wouldn't recommend this if he thought it was gonna. I certainly wouldn't want to do it if I was concerned about that.
Right. Okay. And just lastly, from the budget perspective, I know you said taking money from, I guess, the part-time salaries, money that wasn't used. Will that cover the entire expense if you do the sandblasting, or just give me a flavor of?
It would. Yep. Yeah, because we the way we budget for that pool is, or for our part-time salaries account in the aquatics section of my budget is, it's we for 9 weeks in the summer, 8 weeks plus training, and then the indoor pool essentially for 45 out of 52 weeks of the year, it's usually open. So yeah, so we haven't been fully staffing it for months. So we still have, I think it's
About $80,000 left.
Yeah, about 80 grand left.
Mm,
So, even if we open on time in June, we would still have money to cover our salaries on both pools and do this work.
Yeah, because June, I mean, it opens fairly late in June when you open, right? Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's not
usually
much-
around like the third week of June 22nd, 23rd,
it's like
21st.
a week or so. Okay.
And
Yep.
Craig, is Elmridge drained? You drain it in the wintertime, right?
Yep.
So
Mhm.
that's set to go. The other one would be, if you did the high school, would that have to be drained?
No, we would
All
not
the
have.
repairs you're proposing?
No, we would not have to drain it. We would just have to bladder the valves and, cover them up, and he can get in, replace the piping that needs to be replaced. And then it's about a 2-day job, but we wouldn't have to drain the pool either.
All right. That was it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, the question that you asked last is the one I was most interested in about how much remaining in that fund. So the question, I guess, is what happens, do we reinvest in the pool versus returning it back into the general fund? I guess the other question I have, if there is some damage that does take place, is that generally, covered by the contractor that takes place, or is it more of a, we're assuming some level of risk if something does happen?
I don't think there's much risk that we're assuming in a job like this. You got to think of it as you're sanding down your walls or the outside of your house. If you sand it down, that it's going to absorb more, right? I'm not too worried about that. But yes, our contractor, he's been working with our department for over 20 years. He's reputable. If there was damage done, he would step up. So.
Yeah, no further questions for me on this. I think everybody else did a good job covering it.
Craig, just, I have one for you. In the proposal, it does note that the pool needs to be drained at the high school. And I just want to make sure that we're correct in that, because you just said we didn't have to drain it.
Yeah, I'm sure we're not draining it.
Okay,
No, they might have, if the bladders don't work to do the work, then we would have to drain it. But as of now, this proposal calls for no drain of the main pool. So,
okay. So I think Jeff asked a lot of good questions on the pool, so I have nothing there. I guess my next question on it would be to John and Mona. Just kind of asking overall, where is our budget into this year? Do we project that we can do this? Is there concerns because of COVID or other reasons? Unfortunately, like, all our snowstorms seem to hit on weekends and overtime and last 24 hours. So before we do anything, just give us a briefing, I guess.
We were saving that for the next agenda item. Do you want me to give a highlight, John, or?
Well, I'll make my brief comments and you can give your
Okay.
highlights, where we sort of ran our reports through January, and then we've started getting the snowstorms in February. So as we stand in January, our revenues for tax collection revenues are ahead of benchmark. Most of our expenses are in line. Our overtime budgets were slightly higher through January based on a monthly average, but I'm sure that they're going to get hit hard. So I think the only concern is related to the snowstorms and how they're impacting overtime. Most of our other line budgets we have some departments that have some good, healthy surpluses because of COVID, especially human services and seniors related because of that. This is an opportunity to reallocate some funding to do a repair that's going to be needed to be done. So I would tend to think if we look at maybe the Elmridge pool at this point in time, I would say yes, but going forward with some other projects that have similar circumstances, I would say we may have to hold and make our decisions around April when we get our the next 2 months of tax payments in.
Okay. So you're comfortable with doing this at this point, and would that? I mean, I know the high school project's only a $6,000 project, but if we tackle that at the same time, Craig could remove that from the budget line item in next year's budget. But I want to make sure that overall in the budget that we're comfortable.
I guess to that last point, when would this work be done? It did say the proposal is good for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, he puts that on all of his invoices or quotes, but this would be done in May, because it's quite a process. We're adding a couple extra days of work just with the sandblasting, and then once you paint the pool, it's got to cure for 10 days before we can even put water in it. So we're looking at mid-May for that. And quite frankly, with the indoor pool, we could do that at any time. I would coordinate with the high school to see what their usage would be. I mean, he could come in and do it on a weekend too. If we needed to, if there was coverage at the high school. So that one's a little more, if you guys want to wait that one out, we could wait that one out. But securing a commitment for the sanding and the painting is huge, because these guys are going to be lining up other jobs. So, up to you guys.
Could
I can
we,
wait.
Craig, could we wait until early March to lock them in? So we get to see what our February revenue numbers are.
Yeah,
And if we're still ahead of our benchmark, then I would say we could lock them in first or second week of March going
That-
forward.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I think we
And
have
you
a
can always
finance,
throw them the bone, they could do the high school project.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I can hold off.
Okay,
yeah, 'cause
so
we have a finance meeting the same day next month, I think on the 11th also, right? So,
Yeah,
okay, so should we just table this till the next meeting and move it forward once we have our February numbers?
Is there an action that we need to, is this to get the sense of the committee, or do we have to vote affirmatively to approve the plan?
well, we're doing this because it's a visible activity in the town. And we wanted to make the finance committee as well as the council aware we're doing this project. It's all within the same aquatics budget.
Mhm.
So the charter allows the town manager to approve interdepartmental transfers. So it would just be consent by the committees that to move forward with it. And then I would just make the necessary accounting adjustments to cover the costs under pool repairs. So I think it's more in a sense of transparency, saying that we have an opportunity to do some repairs with some excess funds due to COVID. And so we're just bringing it to public's attention.
So we wouldn't necessarily need like a motion to table, just we'll discuss this again at the next meeting and get an update, and then we'll kind of go from there. Is that the sense?
Well, in sense, it would be coming back saying our February numbers came in good, and we want to move forward with this project. Or our February numbers are terrible, we've fallen behind, and we want to put this on hold or back burner it.
So, John, I guess the question Chris is asking, do we need to formally table this, or we just take no action until our March finance meeting?
We'll just table it table it till next month.
Okay,
And then next month will be on the agenda, and then you have to take it off the table.
okay. So we need a motion to table and,
yeah, I'll make a motion to table item 3 on our agenda discussion, pool repairs 2020 to 2021 with the Parks Department.
Second.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion will carry 3-0. Craig, we'll regroup next month. I think
Hey,
it's just,
that's fine.
I
I
think
like
it's
you
just
guys a
maybe-
lot, but I'm gonna leave this meeting now.
control Mother Nature for us. That's what we need you to do.
I know.
Pick it snow, not on overtime, and pick it so it works.
Between
Not on
7
Super Bowl Sunday
7
either,
a.m.
huh?
and 3 p.m. 7 a.m.
Right.
and 3 p.m. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Craig.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
All right. So the next item is our bonding and finance discussion.
Back in last July, the town issued $11,305,000 in bands notes for 1 year. They're becoming due July of 2021. And I believe it's basically to fund the community center, senior center project, and road improvements. And most likely with the state of the state education school construction department, we may just want to bond the remaining $2.25 million. And then if we do get an audit and we get money received from the state associated with our grant, we'd use those grants funds towards the debt service. But we're just continually rolling this money over, anticipating an audit and a closure of this project, but it doesn't seem like it's in the near future. So we're recommending that we probably should go out and bond this money in order to make use of our issuance costs so that we bond it, get the money in to pay for the projects. We can even increase the amount associated with the road program because that still has a large gap, but don't recommend rolling it into a band because it's just additional issuance costs, and that can run, issuance on a band could run around $50,000. When you do a bond, you do have to get a rating agency approval, and that usually adds another $25,000 to it. So if we do all this, we share the issuance costs between the projects, so that one's not taking a hit to taking a percentage of the of their funds that they're taking out of the bond. So that's coming up in July, and so we do have to start working with our FA, but we had noticed last month that the FA that we've been using for years, Hilltop, which used to be part of, goes way back to Fleet when I first started here. The people that we were working there, they decided to close their Connecticut office down, and that we would be working, if we stay with Hilltop, with their New York office, which we don't know any other characters in. So we're going to be meeting with, talking with our bond counsel to see what he thinks of some of these companies that might be out there that could do it, or stay with Hilltop for the time being.
Okay. Open to questions.
None for me.
Jeff?
No.
No.
Can we get
John,
that
I just
in
got-
a recording, Chris?
John, I guess.
It's like,
do
it's
we
like
have
How's your
other-
one?
He's saving them for something. Chris gonna have a list of questions somewhere. I know Chris. They're good questions though, so they're all right. Jen, do we have any other bands coming due in the near future, or will this take care of?
this would pretty much close everything out except for whatever balance is left in the road referendum.
Okay,
So probably if we do an additional $2 million in bonding, it gets us ahead. So we would probably have approximately $6 million left in the road referendum, unless we want to go higher, depending on what market rates are and our plan on our plan on our road replacement program. So
right. And then, not knowing the details of the market, I guess, until we go out, is if a bond premium took place on this, and understanding our prior meetings with bond counsel, we could potentially use that money for the road improvement program,
right.
because it's a referendum item that's
Yep.
already been approved.
So we'd probably be wiser to lower it to maybe no more than $2 million. And that way any bond premium would be covered with the additional $6 million. I don't think we'd get that amount.
Right, right. But it's I guess it's some advanced planning, so we don't have to go out and borrow again in a
Yeah.
smaller amount. As a general right now, I think interest rates are fairly attractive, but I don't follow the bond market that closely.
True. And then I'm not sure, there probably wouldn't be enough time for any changes that could occur in the market due to the changing in the political parties in Washington. Who knows what changes they might make.
I don't
could
see them
affect the
affecting
markets.
interest rates, but in the short term anyway. But that's an opinion, not a fact. Okay, so I guess the action item for us is
It's more of an FYI
okay.
that it's coming down the pike, that we definitely have to do something to raise $11.3 million in July. And the recommendation is let's bond it and get it secured and start paying it down. Then you run into a budgeting question. That's more of a discussion item too. Do we budget for the payments in next year's budget, or do we schedule the payments the following year's budget, way we structure the deal, and then get into our 6-month interest, 12-month principal payments. So that's the other side of the question if we do the bonding. If we just went with bands, then we just would have to worry about a interest payment.
Right.
So,
And what would your recommendation be at this point?
well, it's pay me now, pay me later, but it
Right.
may be wise to extend it into the following budget year because I believe we're paying off one of our refunding bonds next
Okay.
budget year. So we'll have an extra, I know whether it's $300,000 or $450,000.
So from a cash flow,
We
one's
diverted
expiring.
debt payment. So we pay it this year out of the refunding bond, and then the following, next year out of the refunding bond. Then after that, the refunding bond money would be transferred over to the community center bond.
Okay. And does this get approved by, I guess it's procedurally, the council approves this, or this just gets?
No,
You handle it?
this is more driven by the market.
No, I meant
and-
the bonding in general. Going out and issuing bonds, does that get approved by, is that the
It's
council
been,
approval?
it was approved in the referendum,
Okay,
and the referendum states that the town manager, finance director is authorized to go out and raise money to pay for this referendum project. So theoretically, it's been approved as all part of the whole referendum process.
okay, so there's no action item, it's really more about transparency, and we'll report it to the council at our meeting.
Yeah, and then like a heads up on, we're gonna have another debt service payment coming down the road.
Okay. Very good. Let's keep moving, I guess. FEMA-related expenditures and reimbursements.
You skipped.
did-
something?
Oh, did I skip? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I can be,
Wasn't
I'll try,
intentional.
I swear I'll be quick on this one.
All right, defined benefit pension valuation. Sorry.
Every 2 years, the town's 4 pension plan, defined benefit plans get evaluated by the actuarials. We received 3 of them, so included in here is the regular employees, the volunteer fire, volunteer ambulance. The makeup of the asset investment policy are very similar. It's just the size of the assets are different. The general employee is the largest plan, so I included most of the executive summaries and some of the items that I can understand before you start getting into the actuarial world. And then we try to save some paper. If any other committee is interested in seeing the whole report that gets into some actuarial statements and so on, we'll provide it to you. But just briefly, beside the summary, if we just look at that page 1 or before of 8, and that relates to the regular employees. So if we look at the first line, it's where it says as of September 1st. The last valuation said our yearly contribution should be about $430,000 and change. This year, it just went up slightly up to $464,700. I think it has something to do with mortality tables and so on. So that's one of the items. The other one is down under B, market value of assets. It went from 41 in 2018 to 44. But in this current year's market, lately, the way the market has been going, it's been growing so that since September, I think these assets now valued at the end of January are worth $48 million. So as long as the markets continue to grow or even stay steady, our plans have quite a bit of assets in there to cover the liabilities. Always the concern is if we have a deep drop in in the markets that would drive the asset price down. Because as the plan gets older, it's will eventually start declining in benefits, but still we do have a number of people that are starting to retire and so on. And the longer people stay here, they build up a better benefit. So that's still kind of a growing liability, which would be under number 5. I think that's a good one to say. Present value of accumulated benefits. You can see how it went from 38 million to 42 million. So that's still growing, but the assets are sort of matching the growth. So then the next line down below, the actuarial calculation of how the plan is funded, we still are slightly above 100%. So this plan seems to be holding out well, again, driven by the well-performing equity markets that we've seen. So if you looked at this last year, you probably did an evaluation in the March period. That's when COVID hit the markets and sort of dropped it down. And ever since then, the assets have been growing and the markets have been going up. So some of it is timing as well. They do evaluation when the market's higher. So that's the regular employees. And then I did attach usually 5. Oh, yeah, the first 8 pages relates to the regular employees. And then the last 2 pages just relates to the firefighters at page 1, in which the changes that were made to the volunteers pension plan impacted the valuation, so that our contribution went from 28,000 for fire up to a little over 167,000. And if you go down to that line number 5, you can see it was the growth in the benefits. It went from $1.4 million to $2.2 million. And that's all due to upgrades made to the fire and ambulance plans so that their payouts are more reflected on the impact of inflation to the benefits to be paid out. And then on the next page, the fire is similar, where the contribution went from 3 to 72,000, and that's due to $500,000 of benefits growing to almost $887,000 of benefits. So, so those increased pension contributions will be reflected in next year's budget. Took me a little longer than I thought.
So that's a little over $0.1 of a mil increase on pensions. Right, about 220,000.
It's almost 300,000, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't do that right. Hold on. 130.
220, say about 250.
260, 230, sorry. I was 100 off.
All right.
140, 170. About 240. Yeah, just a quick question, if I could.
Sure.
The funding ratios for each of the plans, is there like a target percentage that you're trying to stay above, or?
Well, I think we would say that our floor, we'd like to be no lower than 80%, with the understanding that it's being driven down by the assets. If we're in a growing market in which our assets are growing, but our funding ratio isn't close to, say, 100%, then there'd be some concern. So as long as our funding percentages sort of reflects closely to how the market's doing, that's okay. And then, of course, anytime you're above 100%, that's a positive. So I'd say we wouldn't like to go below 80%. I think most rating agencies accept that and based on market conditions, but the town's been diligent in making its yearly contribution to these plans over a number of years. And so that's the good thing that we're doing, is that we make these contributions, and we've been having cash being infused into these plans that are buying equities that are growing. And because you can't get much for cash, right, Mona?
Right,
Uh,
we'll see
So-
that.
So for the fire pension plan, so because of the changes in the plan, that's why the ratio went down to 65%. And so our payment's going to go up to try to fix that, basically.
Yes, yes. The benefits exceeded the assets quite a bit because of the changes in the plan.
Right.
And so when they did their calculation, they said that we have to raise our contribution.
Okay. So we're going to make up ground in the next year. Okay. Thanks.
John, the only question, will these be the numbers presented for the budget, or does this get reevaluated again before the budget cycle based upon the current market?
No, usually for the next 2 years, we would use these numbers
Okay,
because it's taken in a snapshot of time. Plus, again, the requirements that are being put on pension plans reporting in our CAFRA are starting to exceed the cost of our audit because there's so much doing. So we just do it every 2 years.
okay. I guess we'll jump ahead to the one I tried to get to before, FEMA related
Okay,
expenses and reimbursements.
yes. There's 3 pages related to that on this item. The first one I brought back to revisit, which was the page we had from the Board of Ed. I just wanted to recap where we were with that. So they had originally listed their items from the previous year. They noted in the middle of the section about grants that they were planning to receive. Just wanted to notate, you can see the handwritten in the margin. That's where I'm just showing that these funds were received by the Board of Ed, so which was good for them. And that dollar amount, the $459 that they were looking for a net operating budget impact was a number that they were still working with. We had talked about before the 230,179, where we were putting it into our FEMA numbers, that it would try to put it to FEMA and use our money. I've attached on actually the 3rd page, the memo from the Board of Ed, where they were originally requesting that it come from the capital non-reoccurring, their roof money. So we will be taking it off of our funding from FEMA and just honoring their original request, which was having it deducted from their CIP money from the roof. That would bring down to, on that memo, they're at the 229, 166, and that would be entirely up to them if they're going to do it absorbed in their operating budget or any of the funding that they are receiving for this year, which apparently they have a couple of years to use it and apply it for whatever purposes. That's will be their judgment call. So for clarification, so I jump onto the next page, we'll see that that piece will not be affecting our FEMA numbers. It will actually end up being reflected in the capital non-reoccurring page.
Okay, so we're gonna make the line item adjustment
Correct.
to give the Board of Ed the $230,179 from the non-reoccurring.
Right.
Okay.
I won't steal John's thunder. He gets his page later. So on to the next page, kind of summarizing where we are. Our expenses so far to date are minimal, 26,178 that we have for our materials. we'll be sending that through to FEMA for the 75%. We'll see how much is eligible. It's all tentative. Ideally, they'll do the 75%. Some items may be ineligible, excuse me. But we're looking at the split of 19,000 and 6,000 coming against our $180,000 allocation we received. We've got funds coming in, requests coming in, I should say, from the ambulance. They've some that are already expended. They had a request for chest compression kits, which was 3 actual chest compression kits that were at 43,000. After conversation with FEMA, they will not meet the 75%, or at least a portion of it will. So that will most likely have to be absorbed with our 180,000 allocation. So to summarize, I guess in a higher level, if you look at that line item that says the OPM allocation, 180,000, at this point, we're going to have our town piece for 6,545, ambulance 45,904. And we had the email from the health district requesting the 20,500. So just on a side note, that definitely there is sufficient funds available if that's the direction we choose to go for the health district.
And
Any questions?
yeah, I did remember to send you guys copies of the health district's request.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Any questions on the FEMA related expenses? No? Okay. Update on reserve for capital and non-reoccurring expenditures through January 31st.
Okay. We're going to talk about this at Government Ops, Jeff, but
Oh,
basically the expenses that we're incurring now is relating to the replacement of the generator at Firehouse number 3. Sort of down in the middle of the page, there's replacement fire station number 3 generator.
Yep.
Phil and Mona went out and secured some bids, and they came in around, they came in a little high. Phil did some tinkering and retooling and brought it in around 71,000, Mona, in that
Right.
vicinity. So what we did is we were able to use some of his building repair monies, and then we were able to use non-reoccurring money that we had reserved for town building improvements to cover the cost of the generator. Being a public safety building, it needed a generator, so when it broke down, we had to lease one on a basically a month-to-month basis, and I think it was costing close to $3,000 a month
Right.
for it. So the decision, I think we discussed at Government Ops, is if we could buy one and replace it, the sooner the better, to get out of this rental situation that is needed because of the public safety status of that building. And then
and we're also switching to
Mona,
natural gas too, aren't we?
excuse me,
We're switching to natural gas also from diesel. Is that still the plan for the generator?
I believe
Yes,
so.
I
right?
believe he is.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was an additional benefit too. Yeah.
Yeah.
it is.
So that reduced the cost, and it would be a continual flow, so you don't have to worry about deliveries and that. And I think it's cleaner, and generally, well, I think it usually is cheaper than number 2 oil. But
Maybe less maintenance too, I think.
yeah, being cleaner. But also, Mona and Phil worked up an insurance claim,
Right.
and well,
Yeah,
can I get my
yeah.
voice a rest?
I will. We did. We submitted an insurance claim on that because when we looked into the generator, they found that there was potential mechanical malfunction there because there was a fire that was created within the unit. So we were able to submit it to our insurance. And at this point, we are looking at about $16,000 reimbursement for for the damage. Obviously, it was an older unit, so we couldn't get, a lot from it, but at least it's going to help absorb the cost.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's about the only expense that really hit the non-reoccurring account last month. I
Okay.
think most of the other projects are frozen. And then just to get back to that Mona's FEMA section, we were talking about the Board of Ed's request. That 200,000 plus would come out of that darkened school improvements, roof replacement, Stevens School line. That's sitting with 423. So we would make that payment reimbursement to the Board of Ed for their COVID expenses out of that line.
Okay. All right. Any questions on capital non-recurring? No.
We had discussed that transfer payment. I think when we found out we got the final numbers back in on the school roof, and saw we had a surplus there. So do we not need to take an action on that because we've already formalized the transfer of the 230 out of that line item for the Board of Ed?
I would say that would probably be wise to recommend transferring the money back to the Board of Ed and charging it against their Stevens roof project.
I thought we had already done that, or maybe we had just discussed doing that.
I think we were trying to figure out if we could cover this with COVID/FEMA reimbursement money, which it doesn't appear to be available at the moment.
So Chris, would you like to make that motion?
Do we need to make the motion to approve, or are we recommending the transfer of I have to get the exact number here.
130. I had it there.
$230,179.
Yep. All right. So I'd make a motion to approve the transfer of $230,179,000 to the Board of Education out of the line marked school improvements, roof replacement, Stevens School.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 3-0, and that'll go to the consent agenda for Tuesday next week, the 16th.
So we'll have two items from here on the consent agenda, or three, relating to the emergency management grant.
Yeah.
The 20,000 to Health District, and the money being sent back to the Board of Ed.
Yeah, but we haven't discussed the Health District one, but let's go on that assumption for now.
Okay.
So let's continue on with our state aid for municipalities.
Okay.
Item 8.
All right, our update on state aid. For the month of January, we received our payment from the town road aid, $173,105. So we are all set with our town road aid money. And we also received our ECS installment, the 25%. So we're halfway through our ECS money. So we are on target with all state money at this point.
Excellent. I don't think there's much to question there, so we'll go into our monthly financial report.
Okay. Shuffle my papers. Okay. So on our first will be the tax revenue. I wanted to on surface, I would say this is it's a very good picture that we have here, 95.3% at the 70.9 million. The motor vehicle supplementals are coming in track comparison to the prior year. And the prior year tax collections are basically on target. What I wanted to focus on a bit was the $6 million above the benchmark. Again, with this being a 3-year average collection, we're comparing, obviously 3 years, so that February 1st, when we're usually doing the end of the month collection, can fluctuate. It can give you either, it can fall into February 1st if, the end of the month it was on a weekend. So just keeping in mind that if we had looked at that 70,900,000 and moved it into February, for example, and actually to date through February, we've collected an additional 500,000. February right now would look like 71.4 million comparing to 73.4. So although the month of January gives a picture that we're 6 million ahead, I just wanted to give a sense that February as of today would look more like 2 million behind. Slight concern perhaps, but we also did a deferral through April. We've done some more in-depth research on, what is unpaid. We're looking at, for the most part, it's real estate and it's not the escrows. Where at this point, it's the homeowners that are just paying on their own. We had top 10 highest unpaid, and we're just looking at 15,000, 10,000. So it's just individual homes. With that being said, I think we're really thinking that come, the April 1st deferral, similar to when we did the deferral in July, that the payments will come through. Our deferral worked very well for us then, and so we're optimistic that the deferral will work well for us come April 1st. So that was my highlight. I was going to share and burst the pool bubble, but but I think it's something to watch and be cautious. But I don't think at this point it's anything to panic. We plan to send out reminders in mid-March. Ordinarily, you would send a delinquent bill if something was unpaid, but because it's a deferral program, they're not delinquents. But I think a reminder that the deferral day was April 1st might be something we'll consider doing. Okay. Go to the next page on all other revenues. For the most part, I would say we're in good standing. It's where we have certain areas such as interest, which is terribly low. The other offset areas are picking up for the difference, such as recording fees, which is at 75%, or conveyance tax already at 97. So some areas that are lower are definitely being offset by other areas. So for the most part, the only focal area to go back would be seeing what happens with the current tax situation. We keep rolling to the expenditure.
Absolutely.
Just a
Okay.
question before, building permit fees, is that just a timing issue that catches up in the spring normally?
Exactly. That's basically where they are around this time of year.
Okay. Thanks.
Actually, it's actually probably a bit ahead of where they're usually more like a 45.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
And Mona, solar, does that pay once a year?
They usually pay in June at the
Okay.
end of the year,
Yep.
but they do come in.
Just wanted to make sure.
Man, it'll look like that for a long time. For expenditures, again, I think we're spending just as planned. There are areas that we will see some savings. We have the finance for salary savings. Some departments, police department, for example, has some savings in salaries due to more of turnover and vacancy, although a good part of it gets offset by overtime when they do have staffing vacancies. We obviously have some saving areas in the senior programs And there are, although there used to be some savings in the aquatic program in part-time, I think overall, when I was doing a projection expenditure-wise, there are savings overall at this point. So with no concerted effort, as in like, don't put anything on hold, we could definitely see maybe a $500,000 savings in just part-time and salaries and the 100,000 in contingency. So there still is some room at this point if something were not to go as planned with the tax side.
And the interest payments, that's on a regular schedule, because we're at 84.5 there. So we're almost paid up. Just
We're almost paid up. There should just be one more to go for March.
That was part of our restructuring our payments so that we don't have everything being paid for debt service in July and August. So we're trying to, when we do have a steady tax payment schedule, we try to put some off into the second half of the year.
makes sense.
Just a quick question, just because you mentioned about the police department. What is the cost of paying a police officer overtime versus paying police officer an extra hired police officer salary plus benefits? Is it like a wash, or is it not as simple as a equation as that, or?
Sort of broke up on that. I don't know if you.
Oh, sorry. Let me try. So, because Mona mentioned that there's some vacancies, we saved some money, but then we paid some overtime. So I'm just trying to understand paying someone's already a police officer overtime rates versus hiring another police officer, paying them plus benefits. Is it kind of a wash, or is it not as simple as that to figure out?
Yeah,
It's
it's prob-
difficult on the police side
Yeah.
because it's a 24-hour staff requirement. Go ahead, Mona. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, and I was going to say, and it's probably not that simple necessarily, because it depends if you were going to be bringing in somebody new, you're going to bring them on the lower end of the pay scale. Whereas when you're doing overtime, you're having the more, experienced seasoned one and then putting them in at an overtime rate. So I imagine if we did a review on it, it would probably come in close to, I don't know if it'd be a wash. But at least at this point where we're seeing the vacancies that did occur, that the savings in the salary in comparison to the overtime, that it's being a savings by having the overtime instead. But I would say if it was a continued use of that method, not guaranteed that would be the best route.
No, and I'm not suggesting that's like a plan. I'm just curious how we should expect
Yeah.
to.
I think
I
we were
see.
fortunate that it went that way, but you don't know which overtime individual is going to offset the new person's salary. So,
Yeah, no, it's just for an understanding, that's all.
Yeah,
I wouldn't suggest
okay.
a plan. Right. So, thank you.
Any other questions before we jump to legal? No. All right, let's do a update on legal bills.
Yeah, we have a schedule of reflecting the legal expenses through December. We had a little increase in between some of the work being done on Straska Farm before the end of January, as well as closing of the Walnut Road. And then we still do have most of our expenditures are tied into the assessment appeal cases. And we're hoping that the Anakin case is coming to an end. They made a motion and they're waiting for Coles to respond. And if they don't, then the appeal are over.
Any questions on legal?
I'm not just with the finding of that case. Do we get any of our legal fees back from Coles as part of that long and winding road?
No.
Do we get to keep the mannequins?
You can put an outfit on one.
I
Put
would
a
like to
Patriot
leave
shirt,
that
put a
alone
Tom
for now.
Brady shirt on one.
No, we put them in the stands when we have football games, so, when you can't have that many people there for COVID, we can fill the stands still, right?
There you go. I know we have a couple of items under other. One, the first being the letter we received this afternoon from the Central Connecticut Health District. And John, I don't know if you want to present that or Mona. I mean, I
Yeah,
can
just
just
trying
happy
to-
to read the basics.
I think Charlie Brown of the Health District, I believe, contacted the town managers in the 4 towns that they provide service to. And they've been expending money and providing services to the town. Some of these services did not qualify for reimbursement under some money they received from the state. So he's sort of asking the town if they will be willing to share some of this COVID expenses that we received from the state. I guess it's approximately $200,000, Mona. Is that under the CARES Act?
Yes.
And so on. I did have a meeting with the town managers of the other towns, and they say that they're going to contribute something to the health district to help them cover the costs they incurred by providing some additional services that they didn't anticipate to the towns. So our request to Rocky, I think, is about $20,500. And so we would just suggest that if it would probably be a good gesture on the town's behalf to support the health district by making that charge. And then, as Mona said earlier, that we do have funding available in our CARES reimbursement from OPEB.
OPM, yes. Mhm.
How do they come up with, so it said our portion was 10%, just how do they, of the overall amount? So how did they come up with, did everybody, did each of the 5 towns, do they try and look for 10%, so they're splitting it? Or is it by size? How did we get to that number?
I think the 10% was an arbitrary number that they decided to request from the towns. And it would be based on the monies that the towns did receive from OPM associated with the CARES Act. So I think it's an arbitrary 10%.
And this would come out of the money, the grant money that we receive through OPM, not out of our annual budget.
Right.
So kind of along those lines, we understand the request is a percentage of a total grant we receive, but do we know, I guess when we normally look at it at the health district at budget time, it's a per person rate, and we kind of get a breakdown of how those funds are used. So do we have an idea of what kind of increase this is on a per person basis and how those funds are going to be used? Because it's a reimbursement. So if it was salaries, I'm assuming they've already paid their staff. I mean, and I'm not knocking the request. I just want to understand it, because this is definitely an extraordinary time, especially for the health district.
It's like about $1 a person in our town.
Yeah.
Roughly,
I was
yeah.
going to say, at least I think what they're basing the formula on was that the CARES Act, for example, the 180,000 that we received was based on population. So I think their attempt was trying to go based on population. So I think it's like a halfway mark that they use that as their key. So all towns were receiving that second allotment. For us, it was 180 that came through the appropriation, and the other 25,000 we had as reimbursement. So of course there's that, part that's not population driven, but there's some association to it being population driven.
So just so I understand the mechanics of this, so of the 180,000, there's still a certain amount we haven't drawn down on yet because we haven't incurred those expenses, right?
That's right.
Would this become one of those expenses that just goes out of the 180?
Exactly.
Okay, so as long as we weren't going to spend more than 160 anyway, it really doesn't affect us. I mean, I'm very, very rounding numbers here, but
Exactly. That's exactly what it's happening.
do we think we would exceed that amount where we would really wish we had this money, or do you think we'll be okay?
I'd say at this point, I've only heard one request coming through the fire department that it would be, I wouldn't even call it substantial, probably around 25,000. Otherwise, we're doing just, materials and, cleaning supplies and so forth. So at this point, it would not seem likely that we would go to that level.
Okay.
Did you, maybe I took a note earlier, the 43,000 or so that for the chest compression equipment,
Correct.
that wasn't part of the FEMA grant. Was that something that we're paying out of the OPM
That would be
allocation?
part of it. Correct. So we're looking at about 120,000 if the health district would like their 20,000, we'd still have about the 100 remaining.
And then,
Or is that bad round? That was bad rounding, but yes. you followed that.
and then the note that came in, and I'm just reading the email that had come in from Charlie. So this is to help them with funding for activities from July 1 through December 30th. Do we expect there's going to be a follow-up request for the first half of 2021?
I can't say yes or no. He didn't say he's going to have a second one. Hopefully, no. Hopefully this will take him through to the end of the year.
And I have, sorry, one
But
last one.
I'm not sure we could be subject to a second request, but I think he wanted to get this one while after we got the money.
And then just the last thing, just mechanically, are there restrictions on how we can spend the OPM money? Is this something where we have to, provide invoice or then we get reimbursed, or how much leeway do we have?
It's not where we need to send in invoices, but we do have to have information available that says that it was directly related, because of course it being state money, that it's still available for audit. So at year end, we would have something from them that would have to say what it was related to. So there are still some controls in place.
So kind of pick up on what I was asking, what Chris was asking. So just to bring this to the further point. So the money they're looking at reimbursement for is through year end of 2020. I don't know if they're going to make a similar request for the first half of 2021, but would we still be able to use money out of that 180 something thousand if they ask for it again?
If that's what we chose to and it was available.
Is there what's the deadline for drawing down on those funds?
It's for the fiscal year.
So June 30th, so okay.
So Mona, I think the part that I think we're all asking kind of the same question,
Yeah.
in different ways of asking it. It's a valid question. I'm still not clear on it personally. Are we basically saying that the health district ran a deficit in the first 6 months of the year and is now looking for the 5-member towns to fill that deficit using the FEMA money? Or did they make it through and they're planning for the second half of the year, knowing that, this pandemic isn't over? It's just that I think that's what we're all trying to get to.
I think the way it works is they're probably trying to recover their expenses that they incur the first 6 months of the year to be able to apply that money to the next 6 months. So hopefully we won't get a second request that between what they budgeted for and these excess COVID expenses would be covered under this request.
Okay.
They could come at another way where instead of for next year's budget, would increase their per capita charge to make up for shortfalls in this year's budget.
Right. And along those lines, if we ended up contributing more than they needed, maybe they would be able to reduce those numbers. Not that I'm anticipating that happening.
Yeah.
or asked a different way, if we get to like April or May and we see we got like, we're still, even after paying this, we're still gonna have 20, at least 20 grand, let's say, on the 180. We know we're not gonna possibly spend. Do we just say, hey, we're gonna give them an extra 20 grand and, in anticipation of, whatever things are going through, and it'll get used to good purposes, for the health district. I mean, if it's not costing us anything, I don't know if that's proper or, but it's stuff we got to decide now, but it's just something to think about. If they're struggling and there's money on the table we have that's not affecting us, then,
Yeah, I think, I guess there's two ways that I guess we could handle this. We can make a motion and move it to the consent agenda, or if we feel we need some more information, we can gather that between now and Tuesday's meeting and put it on the agenda as a new business item. Basically, that way, maybe Charlie can give us some insight, John. I'm asking.
Yes, yeah, we could do that as well. As the request just came over last Friday,
Okay.
and then just to put it out on the table that they're seeking it, and then perhaps it'd be better for to get Charlie to come in and speak to it directly, as opposed to trying to at this point of guesstimate what they're doing.
Right.
So why don't we do that? We'll put it right before Craig's pool and ask Charlie just if he could just make a brief appearance.
Yeah.
For Craig's sake, we may want to put the pool first.
But and I just want to say this. I mean, the health district has been doing a phenomenal job. Something that we never at least I never anticipated, a pandemic of this magnitude, or at all for that matter. And this is by no means a questioning of the effort they've made and what they've been doing. It's just so we're transparent with it and we understand what we're approving, I think, is the reason we're asking Charlie to come. So I don't think we need to make a motion if we're just going to put this under new business on the agenda for Tuesday.
I don't think we need to put it on the agenda for Tuesday. We'll just, it will be discussed and decided upon at the next finance committee meeting, and then
Okay.
Put it on the next month's town council, the 15th.
That's fine. I thought it was more pressing than that. That's why I was pushing for Tuesday.
Well, it was just more if you wanted to make it and get it out of the way, but as I say, it was a short one, so that maybe we just try to get more information.
Okay.
To get a better comfort level of the needs.
I think that would be great.
And there's no sense that time is a factor in terms of when we would approve it. Didn't sound like.
I'm sorry, you brought up.
There's no. It didn't sound like time was a factor as long as we had it within a month or so.
No. I think it's more that we're looking into making the commitment, but we just need a few more questions answered.
Yep, absolutely. All right, the other item, John, we talked about when we were putting the agenda together. We said we discussed under other was a formulation of some kind of budget or idea of expenses towards Straska Farm now that the town owns the property. I know we have metal to be removed, and I know you're working on getting an estimate on that. We have a house and I guess a barn structure that we need to remove. What else needs to be done to get the farmers on the property for the spring? I mean, we don't have anything budgeted at this point.
Correct. I think it's more maybe not coming to the itemizing it to the dollar, but you mentioned some of the things that would need to be done. Anything structurally related is the town's responsibility, and so on. So we do have money in the in the bond offer still to use. But I think it's a time that we should be thinking about appropriating money in the CIP for the Strathcona Farm project, whether it's $100,000 just as seed money to cover various cleanup costs and so on. And then eventually we're going to be doing the barn. If Ray can get through all the paperwork that's needed to be filed and so on. So I think it's just that we probably should just think of establishing a dollar amount in the CIP basically every year to cover the cost of operating that farm, because it's not a profit-making item. Hopefully, it will be educational as well as additional farmland for the town for the town's scenery.
Yeah, but
There could be other items as well as when we get into maintaining the land. He needs perhaps equipment to try to get through some of the brush and maintain the growth, so that the overgrowth over the years the town can get control of, and so on. And whether we need to do if we expand to like a town gardens, underground pipe for watering an item, but at least we're putting money aside so that we have funding available when decisions are made on how we want to go with this property once we see what it looks like cleaned up.
So I guess there's two things that are, I guess, frustrating with this. We've known this has been coming for at least a year, and we're just talking about putting it into the CIP, which won't happen till next year. And we struggled to get the farmers on the land last year. So how do we, from a budget standpoint, start doing this planning that I think should have been done over a year ago? But how do we start putting it together between now and the next month? Because we're going to have a CIP meeting, hopefully rescheduled by then. But that helps to next year.
And Alan, now you're crossing committees. This was being handed to the Land Acquisition Committee. And
Okay.
I think everybody understood that we wouldn't be doing anything with that land really for at least 6 months, because we had to let the agreement, the former owner do what he wanted to do to remove his stuff, and we won't get into what he did with it.
Yep.
And so on. And we're coming into the winter months, and then the whole thing is we wanted to see what we had left to clean up. Now we have an idea once the snow melts, and so on. So I think the Land Acquisition Committee is going to probably start discussing the uses for it and so on. So
Okay.
instead of budgeting idle money in a tough budget year, we probably delayed it for till next year, when we actually will start seeing some action. Now, again, we rushed through as quickly as we can to get the lease done, and the farmers for $1 had 5-6 months to work their property. They had other responsibilities of the land and so on, so they haven't really come to the property at all. So the sooner they get in and start cleaning up their property for farmland, hopefully identify items that need to be cleaned up that we can use against our 500,000. So I just tend to think that we were understood that to get this property, we had to allow the previous owner some liberties to try to get whatever he wanted, and so on. And now's the time to start.
So land acquisition, open space is the one that's going to put a preliminary budget together. Is that the?
Well, it can be discussed there.
Okay.
Again, if you're looking for a pinpoint dollar amount, I'm looking for this to be an amount that would be probably appropriated, maybe a little higher the first year and lower every year. And if we don't spend the money, then it remains in this Strathcona Farm Special Revenue Fund, so that if we do have expenses, we have money to cover for it, and so on. So
Okay,
I think, sorry, Alec, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I think it sounds like there's a couple of things, there's what we need, there's what we know we need to do. And then there's the long-term things that we might like to do, which hopefully won't actually wind up costing that much because it'll involve things like grants and working with the farmers who already have a lot of the equipment on the land. And there's unknowns there, but, we know that we had originally bonded for this, or for the 7.2. I think it'd be helpful to understand how much of that contingency is remaining, to be spent. And I think it'd also be helpful once we start, and I understand we might not have all the bids in yet, but, even if we're looking to ballpark this, what's the bid, to remove the scrap and knock down the house? That'll at least give us a sense of where we are, if there's a shortfall between, the 7.2 and what we needed to do to secure the property. And then I think that might be something for finance or CIP, but I would hope to think that those would be the ones that we could at least get. I mean, I understand that the long-term vision is going to include other amenities there, but I don't think that the town's expectation was that this was going to be, a big, cost sink, not a money maker, but not something that would be taking a big drain on the budget either. I think probably the Farmland Acquisition Committee can can work on that, the amenities plan and the site plan, but at least in the stabilization piece of it is that something that, or do we have a sense of when we might be able to get some of those numbers?
I think the weather put a damper on it, where until the snow goes away, we need to bring in the environmental people to test that parcel B land where the house was and so on. And most likely, hopefully we'll get some quote on removing the house and as well as the equipment. So it will be coming along. We're at the mercy of the weather where we, because it's like a past winter or something that had no snow, may have to wait or even longer, depending on this how the snowstorms materialize. So I don't think it's a time if we put in some money with the understanding it's going towards Stratford Farms over the next few years. If we do get the opportunity to start taking down the house, which probably would be the wise thing, is testing it, just get rid of it and save money there, and so on. So, I think it's more along the lines of getting something to try to anticipate what work we want to get done this year with the best numbers we have available at the moment.
Well, and we're on the clock if the STEEP grant is going to go through, we do, from what I understand, we have a limited window of time to be able to, build a structure on site there. Right now,
I think it's 2 years, Chris. So.
We got a house there on now. So I mean, if it's not going to be,
take 18 months to do the paperwork and a month to build the farm, the barn.
Right, but I think in terms of how we would budget for it, it's either going to be in this year or next year's budget. I think we just need to have some understanding at some point. Understand there's snow on the ground now, but it's getting a sense of.
But the understanding is this would be a special revenue fund that if we have extra money in the budget that we budgeted for, roll into that fund, and then we try to get that every year so that we maintain our maintenance charges once we start getting an understanding of what our costs would be. So this money wouldn't disappear. It'd probably be wise to have the money there to cover expenses that do come up.
I think Chris and I are on the same page. I think we're talking about short-term expenditures versus long-term planning. And I guess, we know that we escrowed $500,000 for land cleanup. That doesn't count any of the structures. That's metal removal. So we know we have that piece, but we don't know if that'll cover the cost yet. And then we have to figure out, I think in the shorter term, not a real long term, is what it's going to cost to take down the barn that's there and then take down the house that's there and start thinking about that. And if I'm looking at it from a budget standpoint, not the logistical standpoint of what maybe some of the other committees have, but I think we really got to start having those discussions sooner than later.
So Alan, let me ask you, what would you budget for?
Well, what I'd be budgeting for personally is I would,
Would you
I
say
probably-
$100,000 is too much?
but that's next year's budget. I'm talking, I guess I would have had someone come in to get estimates at this point. What does it cost to take down a house?
Well, we're attempting to get those estimates
Okay,
right now. We don't have them in our hands. We're attempting to get them. So I guess I'm saying you got a timing issue with the budget that has to be adopted and the information we have to get. Hopefully we can get it all before that point in time.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying that if you're looking for a dollar for dollar thing on what we're going to spend it on this year, I think that would be, difficult to attain within the budget cycle. And the weather starts clearing up.
right. But I guess if I'm understanding the way you're saying it is we're really talking about planning for next year's budget and nothing will materialize under this year's budget except for maybe some scrap metal.
Sort of broke up. The only thing I got was scrap metal.
We'll get the scrap metal potentially removed during
Yeah.
this fiscal year because we put money in escrow. But we won't be able to do anything in
well,
regard to the house.
The money in escrow is being withheld from the seller or the buyer, the seller.
Right,
So whatever money we have left over from that will be returned to him.
correct.
We have to pay for the house to be removed and so on. We do have people lined up that are interested in looking at it and giving us quotes. But again, the weather is impeding us right now.
Okay.
So I think we may be able to have some if we have a hot spell and things start melting down. But I think we should have some numbers, hopefully before we have to adopt the budget on what those costs are. And again, we do have about 50,000 of remaining bond money that can go towards some of the testing. Maybe we have to plan on taking the house down in July or August or sometime later in next year's budget with some of that money that we budget for this year, for next year.
Okay, so it sounds like we still got to wait a little bit before we can ballpark some numbers.
Yeah, I think we have an idea of what we want to do, but we're being held back because of the.
Yeah, I just think that the big thing for me, and I understand that, it's in progress, but hopefully, between now and budget season, we can get a number on what does it take to knock down the house, because we have, it sounds like about 50 left over from the bond proceeds. I mean, construction isn't my line of work. I don't know if that house is to drop it or move the house, if it's 20,000 or if it's 200. But, I think probably our sense is that this is going to be a tough budget, and we're going to be sharpening our pencils and trying to cut where we can. So if we're going to be looking to include a CIP line item for the farm, I think at least the first year we want to come as close to the pin as we can. If it's 100,000, then that's what we need to do. But that's going to be make it tough to either to make cuts out other places. So getting at least making progress on the bid for what's going to take the demo and move that house, I think would be pretty big. And hopefully it's something that, within the next, 2 months, we could get. I mean, I understand weather's a factor, but it's also right by the road too. So, hopefully if there are people interested in doing that work, we can get some competitive bids.
Yes. The latest 2 months. There would be continual snowstorms every week. But we have to finish up the testing, and then there'll be remediation associated with that and with grounds and so on. So, yeah.
All right, well, I guess the best answer is wait and see at this point, but at least we're starting the conversation is the important piece.
Yeah.
Anybody, anything else under other, or are we good for a motion to adjourn?
That's for me. With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Aye.
Have a good one.